Hey, who's ready to vote? I need to start making like a theme song or something for these. Who's ready to vote? Hi guys. Who's ready to vote? Who registered on National Voter Registration Day yesterday? Or was already registered or registered today? That counts too. You love my top? Thank you. Money Jesus. I love you too. You guys. I'm gonna need a lot of energy from you today when it comes to learning shit. Because I'm tired. I ate a Philly cheesesteak. I'm full. I could sleep right now. But learning is important. Okay, you guys. I hope you're doing great. If you didn't know, this is the second installment? Second episode of the Instagram live sessions, the new voter Instagram live sessions. Long story short, I don't know anything about voting. I don't know anything about how to vote, about what I'm voting for, about what anybody in the government fucking does. So I decided to get all you guys together and figure it out together with some different specialists. This one's called Who's the Boss? We're going to be figuring out who the fuck the president is, who the fuck the vice president is, what the fuck they even do. Thanks for coming in and joining us. And I'm going to bring in Ashley Allison, who is the National Coalition's Director for the Biden-Harris campaign, Executive Vice President at the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, and former Deputy Director and Senior Policy Advisor for President Obama in the White House Office of Public Engagement. Ashley brings over 15 years of outreach, community organizing, and campaign experience, along with an expertise in crisis management, coalition building, and strategic planning. I am going to figure out what coalition building is, because I don't even know what coalition building is. No, Sinead just left. I wish she stayed longer. I was begging her before she left me this morning. Before I bring Ashley on, I just want to tell you guys and remind you that I will be saving the live. You can find it in not the Reels, the Instagram, what's the other one? The episodes one. Whatever that is. You just swipe and it'll be there. And I'm also going to be putting out different snippets with timestamps so you can see exactly what we're talking about. If you have any questions during this live, please feel free to ask them in the questions box thing down there. Don't even know what the questions box is. Feel free to ask them in the questions box thing. IGTV, that's right. It's on IGTV. If you have any questions, please ask them. This is what this is for. I really want to just get people educated and understand what the fuck everyone is doing here, because it's time we learn. Okay? I'm going to see if Ashley Allison is here. Yes, she is. Yeah. Here she is. Hey.
Hey, what's up?
Nothing much. Just ate a Philly cheesesteak. Feeling good about life. What about you?
I'm hungry, but I'll get to dinner after, you know.
Philly cheesesteak is a good choice. I feel really good about it in case you needed any inspiration for what to eat later.
Philly cheesesteak. I might put that on the list.
You should definitely eat it. Welcome to the Who's the Boss episode of the Voter IG Live. How's your day going?
Well, I'm on a campaign, so it feels like Groundhog's Day every day where you just go, 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 go. All in all, it's a good day. It's a little chilly. I'm in DC, so it's a little chilly, but I feel like we're winning the day, so I can't complain. How's your day going?
Good. Yeah, it's going good. I didn't really do much today, honestly. I'm like really in the middle of nowhere, just where I like it. So pretty relaxed. Spent some time by the pool earlier. I'm making music, so I definitely can't.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, let's get started because I really want
Who's the boss?
to. Yeah, I want to know who the fucking boss is. Okay, so the first question I have to ask is, what the fuck does the mayor do?
So the mayor is an elected official. They run cities. So they are the person, it's like if you think about a school and you compare a school to a city, the mayor, the principal of a school is like the mayor of the city, right? So they determine the budget of the city. They determine things about the schools in the city. They determine bus lines in the city. When you see places that, like in a lot of urban areas, affordable housing is really hard to come by. And so the mayor decides, if they're going to let these big luxury buildings come into neighborhoods and gentrify and move folks out, or if they're going to make sure there's affordable housing. So they run cities, and they are a very, very important part of our country. There are thousands of mayors in our country, but they can say what happens in a city that you live in, and they're elected, and everybody's term in a city is different, but they're really important to make sure that our cities and states function properly.
Okay, so that sounds like they have a lot of jobs and they have to be good at a lot of things. Like, how do they have people that are, um, that are appointed, or I guess, how do I say that? Helping them, for instance, do the math for the budget, or do they like really smart math?
Well, mayors are like there's all different types of people. So think about this. Mayor Pete, if you follow the Democratic primary, there was Mayor Pete, and Mayor Pete was a mayor of a small town. He was a former soldier. And so he had a very different experience from Mayor Bloomberg, who was the mayor of New York City, who is like a gajillionaire and is a businessman. So mayors come from all different types of backgrounds. They do have people who help them. They normally have like a cabinet or a committee of folks who support them, who make sure the office runs. Then there are different departments in a city. So transportation, they'll have someone solely focused on the transportation, but they'll get to sign off on it. And then they'll have someone focused on schools, but they'll work with the school superintendent. And then they also have these folks called city council members that are kind of like the checks and balances to the mayor. So the city council often approves the budget for a city that the mayor wants to make sure that they can keep the streetlights on.
Got you. Okay. And how long are they in office for?
It depends. Some can have 2-year terms, some can have 4-year terms. It really depends on the city and the state. So there's not a cookie cutter model.
Okay. And how many mayors are up for election this year?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't even know if I know the answer to that. I will say, I can tell you there are a lot. There are a lot of people on the ballot. Like, if we think about the election, it's 2020, it's a presidential year. There are going to be, when you go to vote this year, you're gonna get a ballot that's probably like this long, right? Or if you get it in mail, you're gonna have the president on top. You'll have your senator on the next level. You'll have your congressional member at the next level, and then you may have your mayor. You may have a district attorney. You may have a sheriff. You may have a city council. You may have a municipal person. There's all these different types of jobs that are elected. So I don't actually know how many mayors are up for election, but I do know that if you have a mayor that is up for re-election, you should definitely do your research on them. They often get to appoint the sheriff of your city, which is a really important role. And so you want to make sure that you're electing someone that that lives your values and would appoint somebody who, who will protect your city the way it needs to be.
Okay, and someone mentioned in the comments, they asked if 4 years is the cutoff. 4 years is the most that Americans serve, right?
4 year, well, there's terms, right? So you can be reelected over and over again. So depending on how long your term is, you can go up for reelections. Sometimes they have these things called term limits. And so, and again, this is all by city and state. And so you may hit the amount of years you can serve as a mayor. And if that is, then you hit a term limit and then you have to retire and somebody else runs. The best example of a term limit is the president of the United States. You can only run for 2 terms. And once you serve your 2 terms, a total of 8 years, if you get reelected, you then can't run again.
Okay, and are there any states where there's no term limit? Like the mayor can just be the mayor forever?
There are some states without term limits for various positions. And people are torn on term limits, right? People are like, look, if you've been doing this job for 35 years, maybe you need to give somebody else a chance to do it. And some people are like, well, experience matters. So again, there isn't, the reason why sometimes politics can feel so hard and complicated is because it is different in every area. But people have different views on term limits, but there are some places where they don't exist.
Okay. And is there a website that somebody could go to? Like, what website could you say someone would go to see what the terms are? Where would somebody find that?
If you go to, there's 2 websites I would suggest you go to. For your state, you can go to, like, I'm from Ohio, and if you Google Ohio government, you will probably get redirected to ohio.gov, and that'll be your state website. And then you can find all the different rules. I'm from Youngstown, Ohio, and so if I would Google Youngstown, Ohio, or Youngstown government, and then it'll take me to my city's website. So usually it's your city.gov, or if it's like a long city name, it might be some initials, but you could simply Google your city's name and government, and the thing with the .gov at the end is going to be the official website for your city or your state.
Okay, good to know. So yeah, I can't really type out that specific website, you guys, because there's 50 and even more cities. But just go, like she said, go to your city or your state.gov, and you can see what the term limits are for the mayors, which is obviously going to be really important because depending on that, I mean, you just want somebody who you believe in and you trust and is fit for the job, especially if there's no term limits for the city. Okay, let's move on to the governor.
Yeah.
Who creates the governor? Actually, first, no, I'm sorry. What does the governor do?
So the governor is over a state. And so each state has a governor, and they decide very similar things to the mayor, only their jurisdiction is what we call it, or their area where they are overseeing is much larger because it's the state versus the city. So they determine state budgets. Now, a state budget is approved, and then it goes to a city. And then the city determines how they want to distribute it. So cities and states are connected. The mayor will determine funding. The mayor will determine what type of water supply you have, right? Like making sure the water in your state and your cities are run properly. They have a very big job. Some would argue that the governor of a state is probably one of the most important elected roles in our country, because they really get to determine how a whole state that has millions of people living in it, in many instances, is going to run. And they work with the president, but they have a lot of control over a lot of people's lives.
Okay. So basically, the governor is just the mayor, but for the state, and trying to figure out all the rules for the all of the cities.
Yes. So, like, you know how you might go from one city to the next on the highway? Mm-hmm. The mayor of this city and the mayor of the city determine what is happening in those cities, but the governor controls the highways. So, like, without the governor figuring out, like, making sure the roads are staying good in to make sure you can go from one place to the next, the state could fall apart.
Got you. Okay. And who creates the budgets for the governor? Is he just like a mathematician with the mayor, or no?
No. So every state also has a legislator body, right? So they most of them have a House and a Senate at the state level, just like we have Congress and the Senate on the federal level. Most of them have, only few have one chamber, but most of them have two chambers, a House and a Senate. People in areas, not in cities, but in areas where they live in what is called a district, elect their state legislator. Many people don't even know who their state legislator is. But yet they're the person who will determine and vote on what the state budget is. So the governor may propose a budget and how they want the funds to be spent in throughout their state, but the state legislative body has to approve it, and then the governor will sign it into law. So everything is connected. Everything has to work hand in hand, or the government really doesn't function.
Got you. And where is the money coming from? What money are they using? Whose money are they using?
So take it a step higher, the federal government. A lot of money that the states get come from the federal government. That money comes from taxpayer dollars. And so that's why when, there's a big debate right now about, I know this is nonpartisan, but when you talk about candidates, people are like, people who make a certain amount of money should get taxed a certain rate, and people who make a certain amount of money should not have to pay the same amount of money as someone who is wealthier. But the money that the government has comes from taxpayer dollars. That's why people are like, if I'm paying taxes, why don't my kids get to go to good schools, right? But the determination of what type of school your kids go to is determined by how the budget that the state legislator puts forward determines how that money is spent. So you got to elect people who care about where that money is going to go.
Right. Okay. And okay, no, that's a whole nother. I was going to ask about taxes, and maybe we'll have to have a whole other live for taxes.
We'll have another live.
Or I need to talk to my. This is like, taxes are crazy. Okay. So basically, they get the money from federal taxes. The money comes in, and they figure out where the money gets dispersed.
The money goes to the state. So let me give you an example. We're in an election, and this election, we know that a lot of people are going to have to vote by mail. We know that in order to vote by mail, people have to print ballots. Some states are paying for postage. So right now, there is a bill in the federal Congress and in the federal Senate that would like to release money from our federal government to the states so they could run their elections properly. Once the states get it, then they distribute it down to the cities so that they can properly run it. So this is like happening in real time. It's currently in gridlock in Washington, D.C. Mitch McConnell is not moving on it. But that's why it's so important who you elect, because we should have an election that is fully funded and the money is there. It's that the elected officials who get to make the decision about whether or not they're going to distribute it. That makes sense?
When they're going to release them.
If they ever do.
Yes.
They may never release it. And then what happens? Then you have roads that are crumbling and schools that are not run well. And people who don't have grocery stores in their community with fresh fruit. It's all it's all your taxpayer dollars. So the people we elect should make sure that at least goes back into our community so that we can have, thriving neighborhoods and lives.
Right. And that would be the governor.
That would be the governor. That would be the state legislature. It's all connected. You can't just pick one person. It's like a chain. If one piece is like broken in the chain, I know sometimes it's confusing. So the governor gets the money, but the person who has to say to the governor is the state legislator. They have to vote to agree with the governor. Once they agree, it goes to the state, and then the mayor gets to decide what happens in their city. But the governor can't do a lot of things without the agreement. It's like Trump is the president, or when Obama was the president, but he couldn't get laws passed because the elected officials in the Senate and the House wouldn't work with him. We were kind of stuck without pieces of policy to help improve people's lives, because it's like it's gotta work together in order to.
You can't bypass.
Can't bypass people. Is what you're saying. Yeah, checks and balances. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. I think I understood that better. Thank you for being patient with me. This is what this is all about.
All good. It shouldn't be this confusing, but
I mean, it's good. I'm grateful that we have people like you that can really break it down for us and explain. Okay. My next question is, what is the National Guard?
So the National Guard is a part of the Army. Most people who serve in the National Guard have full-time jobs that they work, and they are called to duty if something is going on in our country that needs special attention. Most recently, in the last 8 or so years, we have seen the National Guard called into cities, often around protests around police violence. But they are a reserve of people, basically, that can come in and provide extra support and protection for communities when needed. So it's a part of the Army.
Okay.
And the hope is you don't really need the National Guard. The goal is that things stay peaceful in cities and that you don't actually have to call in the National Guard. The person who calls in the National Guard is often the governor.
Got you. Okay. And how does the mayor interact with the governor?
Well, on a day-to-day basis, they really don't interact that much. A lot of times when you see a mayor or a governor interacting is in a moment where, a city has protests and they may need some support from the state, or if they are in a financial crisis and need more funding for their schools, sometimes that will interact. But really, they function as independent bodies most of the time and don't have a lot of day-to-day interaction.
Got you. Okay. And how long is the governor in office for?
That also is dependent on the state. So for example, in a state like Virginia, they have shorter terms versus a state like Ohio, they have longer terms. So it all is about, you know, the United States has a constitution, but each state also has their state constitution. And so that governs how long people stay in office and when people have to go and actually make the laws. So it's a state by state effort.
Got you. Okay. And again, people can go to for the governor, they should go to their state website.
Yes.
To figure out what the term limit is. Is there a term limit for governor? I didn't talk about that actually.
Sometimes. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Okay. Now this next, hold on, let me. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay, cool. Sorry, my screen kept. Yes. Okay. So my next questions have to do with the president and the vice president, because in my head, like growing up since I was a kid, I always thought that the president was like the king. But then I started realizing that he wasn't, that it was the checks and balances, and that he had to go through all these different things. He was just like the one guy who got the most face time, pretty much. So let's just break it down for everyone, especially me. Really, this part of the live is very difficult for me to understand. So let's go slow. So what does the president do?
So the president is the leader of our country, and they are elected. There's an election every 4 years, and we're in an election season. Once the president is elected, it is a Tuesday, the second Tuesday of November. They then are inaugurated in January. Once they become the president, they decide. They can determine or call for the country to go to war, and then Congress has to vote on it. They can propose legislation, but Congress has to vote on that. They can say, I want budgets to pay for X, Y, and Z and go to the state, but Congress has to approve that. However, the president does have something called an executive power. And so there's some parameters, but the president can decide, you know what? I want to create an initiative that focuses on historically Black colleges and universities, and they have the executive authority to do that. Or President Obama did something called ban the box and decided to remove the question about whether or not you have a criminal record from job applications for federal jobs. He was able to do that. So they have a lot of power and a lot of authority, and they really set the vision for our country and the direction that we want to go.
Okay, and what's the difference between an executive power or executive order, like a bill or a law?
So an executive order can be signed into law, or to happen in like a law by one president, and then as soon as another president is elected, they can unsign it. They could do away with it. So it is literally, many executive orders continue on, but what you will have seen from Obama to Trump is a lot of the executive orders that Obama put in, Trump undid. A law is a lot harder to remove. So a law goes through a lot of different processes to actually get a vote, a negotiation. It gets a vote, and then if it's passed it passes the House and the Senate, then the president signs it into law. And the only way it can become or not be law anymore is if it goes through that whole process again and they change the law, or somebody sues and says the law is illegal. And that happened around the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. Obama worked with the House and the Senate, took a long time, almost 2 years to go through. It was signed into law. And then someone said, I don't think this law is constitutional. And it went through the Supreme Court, which I know you want to talk about too. It went to the Supreme Court. And when the Supreme Court decides it can make something no longer be, because it is illegal, no longer keep it a law. But it is really
Right.
hard to change a law. Really hard.
Okay.
It is also really hard to pass laws.
And okay, so I guess I'm just confused on executive orders. So an executive, like what makes the criteria of an executive order different? Like I think of a good example. Um, say I was like, oh, I want everyone to
So,
wear blue today. What determines that if that's a law or an executive order?
so the executive branch, so there's three branches of the government: the executive, the judicial, and the legislative. In the executive branch, there's like thousands of employees that work for the president and for the executive branch of the government. There are people in this office that if you want to put an executive order into place, that now, not every administration follows all the rules, but they should do checks and balances and make sure that the benefit of the executive order is worth the expense that it will cost the people. And if the calculations pan out, then it can become an executive order. But there's a whole lot of legal checks and balances and financial checks and balances to make sure that this is something that the president should actually have the power to do. Now,
Got
sometimes
it.
when an executive order is signed, people sue about that too and say that's unconstitutional. And that happened with DACA for people who are undocumented. When President Obama signed DACA into law to protect children who were born here and who've been living here and really know no other country to be able to stay here safe, someone filed a lawsuit saying it was unconstitutional. It went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And just this past June, the Supreme Court decided that, and this is a complicated thing, but basically that it didn't win and DACA was going to stay in place. Now, the reason why DACA stayed in place, that's a whole other conversation. They didn't think the law was actual constitutional, but the process in which the Trump administration tried to take it. But executive orders and laws can always be challenged legally.
Got you. Okay. And is a law a legislative proposal or is that different?
A law is a bill that is passed and is actually signed by the president. And there's also something called a veto, and it can go to the president's desk, and the president can say, nope, I don't want to do that. I don't believe in that, and they can send it back to Congress. And the only way it can override a veto is with a certain amount of votes, 2/3 of the votes in the Senate, in the House. Okay. So it's a lot of checks and balances, right? Like the way this country was set up was so that no one could really just take it and run off with it like a king might do, because the president is not a king.
Okay. Yep. Okay, I'm getting there. We're getting there. You guys are getting there because it takes me a lot of process, but we're learning slowly. Okay, I need to speed this up a little bit because I want to get to the Supreme Court.
Yes.
And what the Supreme Court does and talk about RBG. So I'm going to speed this up a little bit so we can get through it all. Okay, one more thing just to cap out the president thing. The president is in office for 4 years, is up for re-election every 4 years. They can have how many terms?
2.
Okay. All right.
Good. Yep.
Good. Okay. Now, Supreme Court. What are the justices' duties? What do they do?
So they listen to lawsuits that rise up to their level, and they determine whether or not they are constitutional or not, and really determine the direction of our country. So, for example, when schools were allowed to be segregated, Brown versus the Board of Education is a Supreme Court case that said, no, that was unacceptable. And so segregation was no longer legal. Now, you know, people tried to push back on it, but that was the law of the land. There are people that say, you know, no, you can't just get rid of DACA. That's not okay. That's not, you don't have that authority as the president. And so they, you know, so DACA is still in place. They are appointed by the president, which is really important. It's one of the powers that the president has. They get to appoint Supreme Court justices, but only when there's a vacancy.
And when does the vacancy occur?
Through death or retirement. And we now have a vacancy because of this past Friday, the amazing Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the justice on the court, passed away. And so now there is a vacancy on the court that Trump, or if Biden is elected in November, can fill, depending on, you know, if they decide to move the nominee through.
And just so you guys know who RBG is Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She was the second female Supreme Court justice, is what it's called, right? Supreme Court justice. She was the second female after Sandra Day O'Connor, and she did things for our country. Sadly, she passed, so there is a vacancy. And right now, I've been seeing a lot of stuff about waiting until next election is up. The conversation is, have we ever had this happen before? We're waiting until someone else is elected out if they're going to be elected now, right?
Yes. So we have seen this happen just back in 2016. So in 2016, Justice Antonin Scalia, who was a very conservative justice on the Supreme Court, died unexpectedly. In fact, I will never forget the day it happened. Because it was an election year, Senate Republicans said they will not take a vote on filling the vacancy. President Obama nominated this person called Merrick Garland, who was highly qualified. There were 9 months before the election. They let him be a nominee, and they did nothing to move his nomination forward until the election happened in November. Fast forward to today, present day, we have a very similar situation, only it's not 9 months, it's only 41 days. Justice Ginsburg passed away. It was 46 days before the election. That night, Mitch McConnell, the same person 4 years ago who said, no, we're not going to do it in an election year, said, yep, we're going to push him through before the election in 46 days. The fastest confirmation we would ever see.
Wow. And is there anybody actually even running for the title?
So it's not an election. So the president, so Trump gets to pick who it is. So, and if we waited after to the election to see who the people want to be running their country, Biden or Trump, that is what most people would think would be fair, including many of the Republican senators who said they would do it. But politics is sometimes funny and sometimes not fair, and it doesn't seem like they're playing by the same rules right now. And the reason why is because these are lifetime appointments. And if you put somebody on there that thinks that a woman shouldn't have a right to choose about her own body, or thinks that immigrants don't belong in this country, or think that Black and brown people don't deserve the same thing as white folks, they will be the ones making the laws for our country that can last a generation.
Wow. And that's really important. They literally are in there until, like you said, retirement and death.
Longer than the president, until their death. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a justice for 27 years.
Wow. Okay, so everybody with commitment issues, this is a really important topic for you guys. Because that's eternal for them and maybe for you. So let's, this is serious. And what if?
But that's why it's more important. It's important to vote for president, but that's why you have to vote the whole ticket, because the people who decide and confirm a Supreme Court justice, the president picks who he wants, but the Senate actually confirms, and they have a lot of power. So if you just vote for president and not down the ticket, you're giving a lot of your power away.
Okay. And what is She Will Rise?
Oh, She Will Rise is a new initiative that was started by actually one of my dear friends, Kim Tignor. She, you know, when the vice president was saying, or when Joe Biden was trying to become the Democratic nominee, he committed that his nominee for the Supreme Court would be a Black woman. And She Will Rise is an effort to make sure that when a Black woman is nominated, whether it is under Trump, which it won't be, or under Biden, that she gets confirmed and moves through it. So it's an effort to support Black women to become members of the bench. Because there's never been a Black woman
I love
on
that.
the Supreme Court. Yeah.
And we need to see it. We need to see it. Representation, please. Please.
Yes.
I need to see someone that looks like me in this position,
Yes.
please. Okay. And the last thing I want to talk about, actually, there's two things. A petition. What's a petition?
A petition. So a petition is something that a lot of folks use as a sign of collective power. So you can say, I believe that everyone should wear blue shirts. That's what you said earlier, right? And you can say, I want that to become a law, and people sign, you get as many signatures as possible, and you turn it into the person who has the power, usually, to make the law. The thing about petitions, though, is they don't really have authority. So they are a good sign to show support of something, but they cannot force somebody to do something. So they're really important for organizing, but they can't force people to take action.
Got you. So it's more just like a look how many people think the same way. Maybe you should listen to it, but it's just a suggestion rather than you have to listen to us. Okay. Wow, this is a lot of information. You guys keep saying Kiana for president. Please know this information, even knowing the well-explained bare minimum 101 is like really stressing me out. You can see on my face, my eyebrows are furrowed. Please know I would never want to be president. Okay, so I guess the last thing I want to go over with you before we get cut off is government accounts follow on social media. I think people should know or go to.
What'd you say? I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit.
Any government accounts that you think people should follow on social media leading up to the election and forward? Besides the Ohio.gov or whatever state they're in .gov and whatever city they're in .gov.
I think you should follow your mayor. And that's a good way to know what they are up to. You should follow your governor. You should follow your senator, and you should follow your congressman, because they all have different jobs. They all are always talking about what they believe. And if you see something on social media that you don't like, you should tweet back at them or tag them in your story and let them know you don't like it. Because I know this is a lot of information, but let me tell you, like, you all have all the power. You first-time voters have all the power to shape this future. This election is so important, and it will determine, what the rest of our lives will look like.
Okay, good to know. Take it from Ashley. It's up to us. We got this. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you. Thank you for breaking this down. And again, thank you for being patient with me, with people like me, because we really need the patience and the fucking knowledge. I needed you to explain that a few times. So again, I really appreciate it. Have a great night.
You too. Thank you for your leadership in this effort. It's so important and awesome to see.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
Take
All right,
care,
Ashley. I'll
everybody.
talk to you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for coming. I am gonna get going, gonna get back to working on music, but don't forget we're here every Wednesday for the next couple weeks. Same time, talking about everything we need to know before we hit this election. Next week we're talking about the US Congress. So come back because we all need to learn. All right, love you guys. Talk to you later.